This is a Lazy Susan. I built it for my sister. It's for a card game that she plays, and don't ask what the card game's called because I don't know. But we're going to start off by cutting our walnut. This is black walnut. We're going to cut it to lengths. When you get rough lumber, it's not always flat. And to take care of that, you need to plane it. Well, here what I'm doing is I'm using a planing sled. And you can find a lot of videos on telling you how to make those. It's just really a simple flat board with a piece glued at the end to keep it from sliding off. And I'm placing playing cards under each side, each end, until it stops rocking. To lock it in place, I take another small piece of wood and some CA glue and activator, and I place it on there, and then the wood can't come off while it's going through the planer. This works really good. When you have everything on your planing sled ready, just go to your planer and take your time and just remove small amounts at a time with each pass. And I think you'll be really happy how the surface comes out. Don't worry too much about the playing cards coming out. I mean, if you do, you can hot glue them and everything will be great. But most of the time, the pressure of the rollers holding the workpiece down will also hold the playing cards down. This has always worked out good for me. When you're done with the sled, it's time to turn your workpiece over and plane the other side. This will make each side flat and co-plane. And remember, always to plane downhill. And by that I mean with the grain. If you're a little confused on that, there's lots of YouTube videos to show you what I'm talking about. But mostly, if you are running your product through the planer and you see some tear out, just try it the other way. Turn it around and try it that way. By the way, that's the same whether you're using a planer or a joiner. You want to plane or joint downhill, not against the grain, kind of with the grain, and you'll see a much better result with a lot less tear out. Your next step after planing would be to go to your table saw and put your freshly planed edge against the table saw fence and make your cut. I'm cutting a small piece here because I need to glue it to a larger piece, so it would be a total of less than 13 inches, so I could bring it right back through my planer again. When doing panel glue-ups, nothing, I mean nothing, beats parallel clamps. They're kind of expensive, but if you ever buy any and use them, you won't want to do anything else but parallel clamps. It just makes things so easy. After your glue up dries, it's time to plane to the final thickness. You can help prevent snot by using a spare piece of lumber to go through in front of and behind your project. I have to do this one last glue up in order to reach the 18 inches in width that I need for this project. Sometimes when your seams don't quite line up, you can use just a little gentle persuasion to get what you want. Well, it's time to cut the circle. It's always the most nerve-wracking part of doing this. You've spent all this time and effort on your glue up and getting everything perfectly flat. And now it's time to ruin it in a second, if that happens. I won't go into how I made this circle cutting jig. There's plenty of places on YouTube to find those. It's very easy. You can do it in just a matter of minutes. But I would like to talk just briefly about this Ryobi router. I have 4 different routers. I have a big 3 horsepower router that I rarely use. Then I have a nice Porter cable, and then I have a Makita. But this cordless Ryobi is pretty powerful for the price I gave for it. It's like, if I remember correctly, it's like $69. And I'm kind of a member of the Ryobi family, so I have a ton of batteries. And what I'm doing here is it has a little dial gauge that lowers the bit. So I'm just kind of turning it off, lifting it up just a little bit, and I'm dialing it down maybe 1/4 of an inch or a little less. Then I tilt it just forward, start it back up, ease the router down, and continue cutting a little deeper. This worked out great. After the first or second pass, I decided to go clockwise, which is kind of not what I've been taught to do and not what I did. But I noticed that the trenches didn't fill up with wood shavings so much going in the clockwise direction. Since the bit is spinning in the direction of how you're turning, you need to kind of keep control of it to make sure it doesn't run on you. But this seemed to work out really good. Just continue to go around and lower it, go around and lower it until you are touching the material that you're sitting on. Oh, by the way, put it on something that you don't care about. That's why I use this old chipboard. Now comes the time to line up and mark your Lazy Susan hardware. If you are waiting until you've cut the circle to try to find the center, you can still do that. But you'll notice the little X marks I have on there. When your circle, before you cut your circle, when it's still a square, this one was 18 by 18 square, you can find the center by connecting the corners in the middle and extend those corners out. Then when you line up your hardware, you put the mounting holes on your pencil marks, and you have exactly where you're going to have to drill your holes at, and it will be in the center of the board. Now mounting the hardware, you've probably wondered, how am I going to get those screws into the upper part? Well, you mark one hole turned exactly halfway. Check it to make sure that each hole lines up with that mark. And then you take a Forstner bit. You're going to make a hole large enough that the head of your screw will be able to easily fit through. And that will give you access to put all 4 screws in later when you decide to put the top on. And now comes my favorite part. Yeah, really. I sanded this all the way to 800 grit, going progressively from 80 to 120 to 180 to 220 to 320, and finally to 800. I wanted this to be really, really smooth. Now it's time to put on the finish. And we decided to go with lacquer on this. This is a gloss lacquer. Walnut will look really good with this finish. And when you're spraying lacquer, make sure to use a respirator. Not one of the COVID masks that you see people in Walmart wear with it pulled down under their nose. Do this if you don't want to have breathing trouble when you get older. Get that respirator. Lacquer is great for a few reasons. It goes on really smooth, and it dries in about 15 minutes, and there's no need to sand between coats. Lacquer will stick to lacquer without sanding. But you can sand if you get little nubs in. I did. If you can do this without any dust in the air, it really makes a big difference on your finish. It's final assembly time. Almost done. Use a screwdriver, not an impact driver. That way you don't take a chance of breaking the heads off the screws this late in the project. Now you can see a little better on why we made that access hole. It enables you to put your screw down through and see the hardware underneath. I tried to hit this corner, but it's better to do the opposite corner. I finally figured that out. There you go. It also helps to have a screwdriver with a slightly magnetic tip to hold the screw. Don't tighten the screws all the way down until you have the 4th one in. When you get the last one screwed in, you can go ahead and tighten everything down hand tight. No impact drivers. And we're going to call this project done.